Ed is Evan Markatz, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women. Your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast. Today's episode, 5 stages men go through before they'll commit. And I want you to pay close attention because we're going to lead off with a story that has been on my mind. I shared it with my coaching group. I'm going to share it with you guys today. And I want you to see it from all sides. We're talking about the difficulty that men have in committing, and it's not just men. This is a story I really identify with, so I'm going to share it with you, and then we're going to hit the 5 stages. So before we begin, if you're a Love You podcast fan, make sure you are subscribed. Not that you just sort of hope to catch it from time to time. Subscribe on Apple, subscribe on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube. Give us a positive review. Tell a friend. Without further ado, I got a buddy, we'll call him Patrick, and he's very bright, and he's, early 40s, at least he was when this story took place. This is an old story. And he comes from a pretty messed up family, child of divorce and remarriage and things like that. And I remember him sharing what he was going through, the trials and tribulations of dating in Los Angeles. And, I'm a little older. I got through that. But it took me 300 dates to try to get what I wanted, which I didn't know after 300 dates. So I really feel for this guy. And I come from at least a healthy family, no skill involved, but my parents, loved each other. They were married for 30 years before my dad died. Secure attachment style. This guy's got definite avoidant attachment style. Avoidant for our purposes, our claims to want intimacy, but finds every reason to undermine and avoid it. And he, like a lot of guys I know who are intelligent, attractive guys in the app age, has had no trouble getting laid, and that turned into like a little bit of a sport. So yes, he always wanted to get married, and yes, he always wanted to have a family, and no, he would not pass up the opportunity to go out with someone who is in the upper right hand corner of what is popularly known on YouTube as the hot crazy matrix. And again, doesn't make him look good, but I also know I had a very similar experience between the ages of 25 and 35. So in that way, he's sort of a typical guy. He's got some extra baggage in that he was single for a little bit longer, and he's got a pretty rough background where he didn't get good, healthy relationships modeled for him. And so then finally, he gets himself a girlfriend who is wonderful, just absolutely delightful. Reminds me of my wife, which is about as high a compliment as I could pay. She is bright, and she is attractive, and she's down to earth, and she is fun, and she adores him, and is kind of up for anything. Just kind of goes with the flow and says yes to life experience. So he's like, hey, you wanna pick up and go to the East Coast this weekend? She's like, sure. You want to hop down to the Caribbean? Yeah, let's do that. How about we just stay in and do a movie marathon? She's just a really agreeable person, has her own career, has her own money, and again, there's nothing objectively wrong with her. Here's the problem. They're missing something. He's missing something. And he's not sure if it's something he could live without. And this is where the thing, the rubber hits the road. He, at the time, was missing this baseline, like, animal attraction thing. This high that he had with, women from the internet. Random messed up women from the internet. He did not have that thing with his partner, which, again, I understood because I did not have that high with my partner either. So we're running these parallel courses, and I'm trying to talk him through it, but he's really, really struggling because, like a lot of people, he's addicted to the high. It's cocaine, it's heroin, it's methamphetamine. It's, no, you don't understand. This is really important to me. This is a big part of who I am, is passionate, kinky sex. I'm not going to, betray it any more than that. But like, that is what has been keeping him going for a long period of time. It's also what kept him single for a long period of time. Right? And he recognizes that. So there's this thing that he does that has an addictive quality that he doesn't entirely want to give up. And he knows if he stays with this person, he's going to have to give that up. But this person brings so much more to the table. So I remember when I was having those feelings, I went into therapy. And I was so confused about, what I was supposed to be feeling, right? And again, these are uncomfortable conversations. These are uncomfortable conversations to have publicly. These are uncomfortable conversations to have with your spouse, right? But they're important conversations because there's something really universal about this. So if you're that guy, and by the way, women have this thing too, right? I'm attracted to him. I don't know if there's enough attraction. The attraction's a 6, and the sex might be a 7.5 because he's good, but the attraction itself is a 6. And is that it? Can I get along with that for the rest of my life? So I'm using a male example from a friend of mine who went through this years ago, but this could be you. So there's not a right or wrong answer to this. There's only a dilemma and genuine trade-offs. Is this something you can get over? Should you be with the person that you have the 10 plus sex with, right? If you're getting 10 plus everywhere else across the board, right? What can you give up to get the other thing? And that's a big part of what coaching is about. It's just having this discussion. I don't try to goad people into there being one way of doing things. You don't want to be the guy who marries a woman and feels like you'll be dissatisfied for the rest of your life and you're doomed to cheat. Like that's not a win. And she deserves someone who's all in on her. And so I only share this story because if this happened to a friend of mine, and this happened to me to some degree, which again is not to, I wouldn't want to pigeonhole this, and you don't know that anything about my wife or my attraction or my sex life or anything like that, but really just talking about the feeling of just knowing and the high of insane attraction, which has no correlation to character, kindness, or consistency, or communication, or commitment, or even real connection. When you've done enough of this, right, that hundreds and hundreds of dates, at some point you got to realize, I know what that looks like, right? And from a 16-year marriage perspective, there's not a moment that I ever second guess what I gave up for what I gained, right? Not one moment, because I am attracted to my wife and we do have a good sex life, or at least as far as I'm concerned, we have a good, mutually satisfying sex life. But it's entirely possible that someone else weighs attraction and sex more. But then they're going to have to make another trade-off. What are you going to give up? And how easy is it to find that thing, right? With the 10 plus chemistry, but also lifetime compatibility and trust in someone who doesn't try to change you. You don't always get it all in the same package. I don't really know. I've talked about it before. I don't know anybody who's got a 10 plus chemistry and a 10 plus compatibility, because compatibility is about ease and how well people get along, and chemistry is often about friction, right? That's really challenging. And so I bring this up as a prelude to the 5 stages that men go through before they'll commit, because to me, the philosophical part of that, the reality part of it, is as important as any bullet-pointed list, is to really be able to dial into your feelings, right? Lists just describe what's going on in the world. They categorize things, and I think they're useful, and I know people like lists. But to me, what I really want you to think about is, what are you willing to give up in order to get something, rather than thinking, if I hold out long enough, I will literally get the guy who is the tallest, richest, smartest, funniest, best in bed, nicest, most sensitive. God, as my wife says, does not give with both hands. So you have to have enough life experience to know what you are willing to trade off of. And men, especially when it comes to the physical aspect, I think wrestle with it even more than women. I suspect. I don't know that for a fact. So here are our 5 Stages the men go through. Stage number 1. Exploration. The exploration stage is at this point commonly known as online dating. It's when a guy doesn't really know what he doesn't really know. He just kind of puts himself out there. Imagine a divorced guy who was married for 20 years and throws up a profile on Hinge, and suddenly he's swiping and swiping and swiping, and there's this dazzling array of options that he'd never considered when he got married 15, 20 years ago. And so part of the dating process, the online dating process, is narrowing down, what do I like? What are my tastes? What will I put up with? What would I put up with? Am I learning from this experience, or am I just trying to date the same attractive person in a different body over and over and over again? So exploration is common. Everybody's got to go through the online dating exploration phase. But you're looking for someone who's like, I'm kind of done exploring. I really want to move on to the next phase because I fine-tuned what I think I'm looking for. One note about that. A lot of people think they fine-tuned what they're looking for, but they fine-tuned it wrong. That's one of the crazy things. I'll just make up this example. I realized from dating this one guy who made less money, who was really insecure about making less money, that I can never date another guy who makes less money than me because this one guy was so insecure about it. Someone will draw that conclusion, and that's a false conclusion. So the thing that you're trying to clarify, I always tell people to keep their options really open online, and then trust the process, trust how he escalates through your funnel, so to speak, rather than just looking at that checklist. But I do know most people refine their checklist over time, thinking that they've got the answer. So, number 2, attraction and interest. Right, that is the second stage that guys have to go through. That's when he seems to focus on you as a dating candidate in online dating, and you do the same with him. You're comparison shopping, right? Because each of us could get online and dial up, swipe, and find the next best thing. Someone who's more impressive, someone who's new, someone who seems to be flawless because they're just a face on a website. But when you make a connection with someone, you hone in on that person, and then you are in the attraction phase. And that usually results in what is known as casual dating, hooking up. Doesn't have to be intercourse, but it's generally casual dating is the second phase, where it's mostly driven by attraction and curiosity. It is indeterminate whether these two people who've gone out 3 times and have gotten to second base have any future whatsoever. That's stage 2 before we're going to talk about real commitment. Stage 3, assessment of compatibility. Right? And that's where we start to explore in the process of dating, what are my long-term needs? How do we get along? How easy is this? Do we share the same goals and life values? Do we want to both live in the city, or does this person want to move to the country? Am I looking to be part of a 2-income family, or versus this person who wants the option of quitting their job to be a stay-at-home mom? These are the things that come out usually in exclusive relationships. Right? And it's not something you can't put all that on the table. You're not going to have all that conversation in a text exchange. You're not going to put that out on date number 2. These are the things that people tend to explore as a couple over time. And then you get to the point in the relationship where you're in stage 4, which is commitment evaluation. And this is where it gets really paralyzing. I remember being 35 years old. My wife was 38. We were dating for 16 months, and I was so stressed out. You'd think she'd be the stressed one because she's the one with the biological clock, but I wanted kids as bad as she did. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to make a choice. I don't know the right choice to make. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Right? And it was like a fork in the road. And I gathered all the information I could, and I used my head and I used my heart, and I chose one path. But boy, the time that I was doing that, where you're really weighing the pros and the cons and reflecting on the future, could I deal with this? Is she going to be able to put up with the fact that I'm Jewish and I want to raise the kids Jewish? Can I put up with the fact that she is not as interested in the same, literature and politics and, self-improvement kind of stuff that I do, are these going to be deal breakers or just these things that make us different? So there's a point in your relationship where you've already put in a year or two and you're thinking long and hard, but you still don't have your answer yet, because it takes time to figure out, is this person indispensable to me? Can I live without this person? Do I want to live without this person? You have to have enough time with this person to know that you can't live without them. So that's what happens during the commitment evaluation. That's usually where you get to the point of moving in together, is commitment evaluation. And you're like, all right, we're going to try this thing on for 6 months. And then the fifth obstacle stage before a man's willing to commit, we call it decision and commitment. Right? And that's when you've gone through the previous stages and you make the choice. And I've told the story before, I don't mind sharing it again. I remember I invited my mom out to California. I said, bring Dad's ring with you. Right? The one I'm holding up. Actually, it's not this ring. It's my wife's wedding ring with the big rock on it. I said, bring the ring that Dad gave you in 1968. Right? To California, meet at my sister's place. And I just want to watch my girlfriend, my sister, my mom all interact. And in that Friday night, I realized my wife was like family, right? So I was still on the fence. I was ready to potentially propose. That's why there was a ring. But I was on the fence. And then I watched how she interacted with anybody. And I realized, oh, that's why I feel so myself with her. That's why I feel so accepted. She feels like family. And that's a really, really wonderful feeling. And so the next day, I asked her dad for his permission to ask for her hand in marriage, and I proposed to her the next day. And there's a good proposal story, which I won't get into on this podcast. And then you make your decision. And then there's the hard part. You can't know you made the right decision. Right? Anybody who says they just knew, there's a lot of people who say they just knew. Just know the people who say, I just knew, right? What percentage of them are wrong? Right? I just knew that I was soulmates with 3 women who dumped me in the first 6 months. Right? Like a good percentage of people who've ever been divorced just knew that they were right for each other. So really, we're using our head, we're using our heart, we're using our life experience, we're using our self-improvement, we're using our coaching to take all this information and say, hey, if I take this fork in the road, I know I can make this commitment because everything so far has been so good. There aren't really any red flags here. So a big part of making a commitment is figuring out whose stuff you can tolerate, not who gives you the highest high, in my opinion. I know you might have just wanted to hear the 5 things, but that's where I throw this stuff away. In my opinion, if you're really looking for someone to spend your life with, right, who do I get the least sick of? Whose problems bother me the least? It is ultimately more about tolerance, because you're spending so much time together. You're making so many decisions together. Life is so long. It has so many phases. You need someone that you could basically agree 90-95% of the time without breaking a sweat. Right? And that's why I worry about high chemistry, high friction relationships, breaking up, making up, silent treatment, slam doors. Yeah, maybe you have the world's greatest sex, but I don't know if anything makes up for the amount of friction that you have to have and how much glue it takes to make that relationship work, where I spend 0 time worrying about how to maintain my marriage. We're good. We're ride or die. And there's never any question in my mind, or as far as I could tell, my wife's mind. And we do talk about this kind of stuff. So if you're evaluating commitment, right, it's not that you have to just know. And it's not that if a man doesn't just know, then he's wrong or somehow a bad guy or he's stringing you along. We don't want to assign any negative things. This is the biggest decision you're going to make. So be patient, be understanding with men who don't just know. They are working through these phases at their pace. And if you trust him, know that he's going to do the right thing. You can't coerce him into the commitment, even if you want the commitment, even if you're feeling anxious. My wife putting pressure on me to propose to her after 16 months wouldn't have helped in any way possible. I had to go through my process. My friend had to go through his process to make a good decision. And that's all that I'm doing on this podcast. I want you to be able to make a good decision for yourself when you're evaluating your trade-offs. And I want you to understand that good men struggle with this same exact thing too. Before we go, want to remind you, we're back. We're back in a big way. And I'm looking forward to talking to you because I have changed the way I've done business. I have been very rigid, I think, because I'm like OG dating coach. I had this very sort of tunnel vision, my way or the highway, and I didn't do enough listening because I like talking. I didn't do enough listening to meeting women where they're at. So if you go to evanmarkkatz.com and you click on one of the buttons, work with me or services, or go to the coaching page, you're going to see an array of options. Some of them you could just click on a button and enroll. Some of them require a conversation. We call it a Love You Breakthrough conversation, where you fill out an application. We talk on the phone about you, your needs, what's working, what's not working, what's getting in the way of your success, how it makes you feel. If you're in need of support, now that it's fall, now that summer's over, now that you are present, if the pain is so great of swiping and texting and hooking up and wondering, why does nothing ever change despite the fact that I listen to all these podcasts and follow all these influencers, you need someone to hold your hand. That is my job as a dating coach. I am not an influencer. Right? I'm not a content creator. I am a dating coach who works with individual women to produce miracle results. If that's you, go to evanmarkkatz.com/now, or go to my website and just click around and find the option that suits you. I look forward to talking to you, not just talking to you like this, but actually talking to you, listening to you, and figuring out how I could support you in your relationship goals. Thanks for your time. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.